Hello and welcome to Stable-Ise. Today we're taking a look at the Draenic Elekk Mounts. The Elekks in World of Warcraft are a little bit of an unusual type of mount. They're sort of a mammoth type thing, but they're not quite the mammoths. Personally, I prefer the mammoths a lot more because of the stature and the size and the sort of general influence and sort of power you get from them, but the Elekks are not too bad a substitution, and generally are a little easier to obtain. For you Horde players, unfortunately, you probably won't be able to find an Elekk because you require to have rep with the Draenei, or more specifically, the Exodar. And if you are not a member of the Alliance, you probably won't be able to get a hold of them at all, unless you have one that is faction neutral. And as far as I know, there isn't a single Elekk mount that is faction neutral, except some of the new ones. I think there's one in Warlords of Draenor that is actually faction neutral. But for you Draenei and Alliance out there, all the mounts can be bought on Azure Mist Isle just outside the entrance to the Exodar. You can see it quite clearly, it's a sort of Elekk type training area. For Draenei, you don't even have to have rep because you're a Draenei, so you could immediately buy them as up to level 40, requirement to learn the top level ones, however. If you aren't a Draenei, but you are a member of the Alliance, you will need to have Exalted Reputation with the Exodar. This could be easily done by getting their tabard and running dungeons if you wish, or by handing in quests. There's actually a number of ways to gain rep with the Exodar. It's not necessarily quite as easy as getting rep with the original factions, but at the same time, getting hold of rep with the Exodar isn't so terribly impossible that I would consider it difficult at all. There are quite a lot of different variants of Elekk mount, as you can see. The armoured and the normal Elekks. The armoured are available at level 40, and the regular available at level 20. I wouldn't normally see anyone using these mounts because they're not necessarily anyone's particular favourites. Like I said, most people tend to prefer mammoths because they're bigger and stockier and more difficult to obtain, so they have more of a status, and some people instead prefer, well, things that aren't elephants. They're not terrible mounts, by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not amazing either. Please note, as a faction-specific mount, they will not be available to the Horde even if you have purchased them on the Alliance. This means that no matter how hard you try, you will not be able to get access to these particular mounts. Now, this could cause a few problems for Horde people, but for the most part, I don't think the Elekk mounts are that really desirable. Bearing that in mind, you may decide that you do want the Elekk mounts. If so, you'll have to play on the Alliance, I'm afraid. The only neutral Elekk mounts that I think exist are in Draenor, and they're not very easy to obtain at all, and they're really not worth it. Elekks in general don't look the best, and they're not very difficult to obtain, and they don't have any particular status. If you really want to ride around on an elephant, your best play is the Alliance, but even then, there are definitely better mounts out there that look better, are more stylish, and are generally a lot more interesting or desirable. It's nice that the Elekks exist. It gives a little bit of variety in World of Warcraft and the mount scene in general. It's a nice few sets of mounts to add to your collection, but I really wouldn't say it was worth any too much time and effort to grind rep with the Exodar unless you were actually trying to grind rep with the Exodar to begin with. In that case, they're a very nice little bonus to add on top of your exalted status with them.